Marco Boer, you're a very famous person, right?
I don't think so. I'm just a mere analyst.
But you are still like one person that you go to if you want to have a little bit forecast and views on the future, right?
Yeah. We've been doing this for 30 years, and I'm Dutch, so I'm very diplomatic. So I can say things that are difficult to say in a really nice way, and still have people walk away going, okay, I know what's going on, and we'll just deal with it.
One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today was because I heard, of course, Jeff Jacobson's keynote yesterday, but I also heard what you were talking about, trends. And I was just wondering, how precise do you think trends are?
Well, come on. Everything in life is fluid, right? I always kid that my wife always tells me that I'm full of confidence, never in doubt, but often wrong. and so, it's a moving target. But I think the macro trends are very spot on, right? The supply chain issues, the labor situation, the need for more automation, all of these things are basically baked in.
Another reason why I'm asking is because, with people that are working as analyst people like yourself, right? I think that the more data you can get, the more accurate your predictions will be. And I think that when it comes to the future, it's of course difficult to have data, but how much do you get supported by statistics and or is it more like census in your mind, or?
So it's a really interesting question, because you made the comment, the more data you have, the better you can predict. It's not always true, right? Because you get outliers that could drag you down into a wrong rabbit hole, basically. So what we try to look at is a couple of things. Number one, what is the customer doing, right? The print provider, the commercial printer, what is their outlook on things? Because their level of confidence in terms of investing in new equipment has huge implications. We've got a really interesting thing going on now, particularly with higher cost equipment, where the shops are so busy, right? They're struggling with supply chain, they're struggling with labor. And if you come to them and say, hey, I got this great device, it's $3 million, it's going to change your life, they look at you and say, you know what, I got so many other problems going on, I'm not ready for a new adventure right now. Now the irony is, those who have preceded them and have already invested, they're figuring out how to drive that business. And so in our business, so this is like the little secret, right? What you're finding is that the consumable usage is growing like you wouldn't believe. It's fantastic. The equipment sales, a little tepid depending on the segment that you're in, but the net effect is because consumables are more profitable than hardware, most of the equipment vendors are doing really well. And oh, by the way, the print providers, the commercial printers, are doing embarrassingly well, right? Because they've cut their cost, they're able to put price increases through because the raw material cost is going up, paper, plastics, right, ink cost. And so at the end of the day, I said earlier, this is the first time in 30 years that I can recall where print providers are actually able to pass on price increases and customers are willingly paying them.
Another reason, again, for asking is because also one of the reasons why I take that Jeff Jacobson's particularly interested in your viewpoints is that, for example, with the labor shortage, I think it's kind of evident that the more you can automate your processes, the less you can actually, you need people, less people basically, right? And I was just wondering, or they change positions to something differently, right? And I was just wondering, so can people be so busy that they don't see the wheel getting invented?
Yes and no. Okay, so you're right. Short term, everybody is just very upset about the supply chain issue, and that's, I'm putting out the fires now, right? But the reality is that at the end of the day, it's a general economy. People don't want to do meaningless work, right? Repetitive work. And so it's now reached a stage where, as a print provider, not only can I not get the people, frankly, I've come to learn during COVID, I don't want them, right? Managing people is a problem. I shouldn't say that too loudly, right? But it's really not easy. And so what can I do to motivate my staff? And more importantly, how can I get them to move up the value chain so that the work they are doing actually becomes far more meaningful and far more revenue generating? And so it's a change in business model. And what's really happened during COVID is, for years we haven't wanted to make the changes, right, in our employees and our staff because it's uncomfortable, right? Things are moving along okay. Many print providers are effectively lifestyle businesses. It's nice, and we've not wanted to make the hard decisions. And then what happens is when a crisis like COVID happens, all of a sudden all those rules are out the window. And so now I am making those hard decisions. I am getting rid of these 4 people, and I'm going to hire one guy here who's got a totally different skill, and I'm going to invest in some new equipment, some new software. And all of a sudden, my God, I probably should have made this decision years ago, right? But I didn't have the as Kevin Warren said, the boldness in me, right?
Or maybe the outlook, actually.
Well, yes, I mean, basically we're all a little too comfortable, right?
When we talk about printing companies, one of the KPIs or the measures that I often use in my own analysis, I'm not an analyst, but I'm curious, right, is the productivity, right? And if you look at productivity as a very simple term, you say it's revenue divided with number of headcounts, basically, right? Yeah. That's at least one way to do the. And I was just wondering, are you familiar with when the labor skills get more educated, maybe also more expensive? Have you and you fire people to get more skilled people and more automated, whether that actually is a benefit financially for a company?
So the simplest way to look at that is when you look at publicly traded companies, right? Like you can see the financials, you can see the number of employees. And what you will find is historically, at least in the US market, the average revenue per employee for a print shop would have been somewhere between $150,000 to $250,000 per employee.
Same in Denmark, actually.
Right? And so that is going up now. It's going up significantly.
But that is a logic to it, because if you have less people and you have the same or higher revenue, that is the logic. But if your cost base becomes more expensive because you have more skilled people, more expensive people, I was just wondering if there was anybody who's been studying that phenomenon.
I think it's a little too early, right? Because we all want people to add more value, but you don't really know, probably until about 2-3 years in, if that value really occurred. That's why it's so easy to buy equipment, right? Because I know if I buy this piece of equipment, I can amortize it over 3-4 years. They're not going to go on strike. They're not going to be out sick. I mean, equipment's great, right?
What's not to like, right? Maybe the parties at the printing companies are boring, right?
Well, listen, we're all human, right? We crave social interaction and the ability to touch, feel, smell. It's something we all crave. So we need people, absolutely.
When you talk, for example, an event like the EFI Connect here about trends, obviously trends that vendors always like trends because that is also their forecast to the future, of course, right? If it was more on a private note, do you often also, or do you sometimes have in your own mindset like the wild guesses that are maybe not based on anything because you have an outlook, because you talk to so many people that could be totally different from most of us have?
So again, you go right for the hard questions, right? So when the biggest disagreement we tend to have with the equipment vendors is really about future products, right? They say this is going to be a great market and it's going to be wonderful, right? And then you look at the issues, and I'll give you maybe a silly little example. Inkjet embellishment, the ability to put in varnish with raised profiles and things like that. It's a great value add, and people are willing to pay a lot of money for it. However, the reality is, our viewpoint on it is right now is probably not the greatest time, because as the cost of raw materials goes up, right, the print budgets stay flat, there's less money. And so there's less money to add all those super value add things onto it. So that's going to basically slow down the inkjet embellishment market temporarily. Now, there'll always be customers, there's always going to be somebody who's going to pay more for it. The question is, you look at the financials, and some of these guys are public, right? And you look at the numbers and you go, okay, well, there's the evidence, right?
It was actually very good. I haven't thought about that because I'm also a big favor of adding value to the product. And of course, embellishment and better paper is part of that equation, but you're right, yeah.
It's wonderful.
It is.
Somebody's got to pay for it.
Yeah. With all the things that goes on, and also the post-pandemic that we fortunately start to see maybe in a year's time, we see some closing of it. I don't know, but maybe.
Hopefully sooner.
Yeah, sooner, yeah. I was just thinking that it's also, I think that some people, I actually don't know, but I think that some of the hardware manufacturers has been able to that digital transformation, converting offset machines to inkjet machines and those kind of things. Not because there's a market specifically for it right now, but because they have the time, and some of them also have the money to become more competitive by having the latest and the newest technology. Is that just a pure guesswork, or is that evidence in that?
No, I think what you're sensing is I mentioned a little bit about private equity companies having discovered the print industry. So these
you mean the 60% gross margins, right?
Yeah. So these are the guys who have huge wallets. They can fund investment in new equipment. And these are the guys that are ratcheting up the pressure, right? Because they are automating, they are investing, and they're making a big difference. So
let's change one little subject that dying to hear about, and that is you and David Swang and I had a little conversation on INKISH for some time ago, working with taxonomy. How is it going with that?
So I'll just refresh your memory a little bit, right? So the whole reason we initiated this project is the print industry is perceived on a global basis to be relatively less important than it once was. And at a high level, our argument back to the governments is basically the print industry has changed so much that you're counting the wrong thing. You're missing all of these new applications. It's getting more fragmented, there's convergence. Let's come up with the terms so that you can more accurately track and quantify what's happening in this industry. So we spent basically 8 months working with people in the industry. There's an advisory board with key OEMs. There are distinguished experts, people who are getting down to the nitty-gritty to define, workflow issues and the likes. And so we've come up with this new taxonomy. There's really two. There's a product taxonomy and an application taxonomy. We're now at the stage where we're beta testing that through Printing United Alliance to make sure that we haven't made some great faux pas where something doesn't fit properly. And we've gotten buy-in from both GS1, which is the Global Standards Initiative, and they're going to adopt it. They're going to roll it out hopefully in about 12 months. So as soon as we've completed our beta, they're going to look at deploying it, and so that's pretty good. And then the US NAICS codes, which is the old SAC codes, they have agreed in principle to adopt it, but their cycle time is only once every 5 years. So they move a lot slower. But the real issue for us is that, it's got some practical benefits. So when you go to a trade show, at least you're going to be able to identify things. And then at a government level, we're going to be able to more accurately quantify and size things and track them. Because once we have that, then we give a voice back to the industry and say, we're not a quote-unquote dying industry, right? Because people look and say, oh my God, offset's dying. Okay, you got to be really careful because you look at companies like Komori, right? Their revenues are actually remarkably stable, but it's not so simple, right? Their commercial print business has been declining for years, but their folding carton business has been growing. And so things are shifting in ways that may not necessarily be obvious until you're able to get down to the higher level of detail, and that's the key.
And that is exciting, of course. And we talk about that in another good time. But thank you very much for being here, and thank you for offering your voice to INKISH.
Morten, thank you so much.
Great.
My pleasure.